Welcome to the Healer Roundtable series. Today's conversation explores how practitioners are seeing the feminine rising, showing up inside their work, their client relationships, and the broader healing landscape. Across many areas of life, we are witnessing a shift from rigid, more dominance-based approaches and toward a more relational, emotionally aware, and collaborative ways of working and leading. For practitioners, this shift directly impacts how clients are showing up, right? What they're actually seeking, and how we ourselves are being asked to evolve in the way we hold space and how we're guiding our clients. This conversation focuses on the lived experience of that shift within our healing spaces and what practitioners are noticing in real practice. Today, I am joined by Tam Dillon, mentor for healing arts practitioners, in integrating ancient wisdom with modern ethical practice, supporting healers in building sustainable and grounded professional paths that are rooted in depth and integrity. She is also the founder and chair of Critical Mass, a global collective focused on restoring dignity and respect to spirituality and its practices while supporting the broader shift in consciousness. Welcome, Tam. We are also joined by Sarah Poe, a midwife of the soul, a mama to many, and a mystic at heart. Her journey has been one of profound transformation and healing. Through her experiences of trauma and abuse, she discovered that our deepest wounds often hold the keys to our greatest wisdom and purpose. She believes that we are all created through the good, that we belong, and we are born with innate gifts to share with the world. As a midwife of the soul, Sarah walks beside others through seasons of transformation, darkness and rebirth, and helping them reconnect with the light within themselves. Today, we will be exploring how this shift toward the feminine is showing up in healing work, how practitioners and clients are changing, and what this moment is asking of those that are working in these spaces. Welcome, ladies. All right, let's get started. How are you noticing in either your clients or in your sessions the feminine rising?
Who wants to get started?
There you go.
Go for it, Sarah. You're the first time on one of our episodes. I want to hear from you first.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Thank you for creating the space for us. I this is a big question, and I work a lot in the divine feminine. I work a lot with Mary Magdalene. And one thing that I would say in my work, as well as the people that are coming to me in this time period, it's really a reflection of energetically what's happening on the planet. So what's happening on the planet is being mirrored and reflected in each of us. And, you know, some of us came to an understanding of this before this kind of energetic shift hits. You know, some people will experience something or go through something that becomes their medicine. They're part of their path, right?
Yeah.
And so with me, it was an experience of a lot of wounds and trauma, and then that initiating me on the path of the medicine woman. And then now, especially in the last 6 years, seeing things that I studied and things that I knew and things that I could foresee coming actually showing up and happening. Where, you know, most of us have been involved in talk therapy if we're old enough, and seeing where that just wasn't working, right? It just wasn't enough. And so what I am seeing is more of, I would say the word that I would use would be grace. There's a lot of grace that is being called for and coming through for us as practitioners. And that is that because we're remembering the mother, we're remembering the feminine, and that's it's changing how we do everything. And it's also changing, it's like opening people. The mother is opening us. And so as that happens, people are naturally just ready to receive in new ways, ready to be vulnerable in new ways. And yeah, it's showing up in the way we work and showing up in what people are actually wanting to receive. Yeah.
I agree.
Yeah, I think you put it really, really well there. Like the mother holds us comfortably enough to like feel safe to open up and like to soften into that. So with the work that I do with mentoring healing arts practitioners, the shift that I'm seeing is that, and for myself included, we've all kind of functioned in heavy yang survival mode in like very masculine spaces, and it's a conversation I've had with my own mentoring clients and just with practitioners in general, and how they're trying to shift out of that heavy masculine survival mode. And like the minute you do, like your business thrives, your work thrives, everything just thrives. For me, back in 2016, I left quite a toxic relationship and went on this wonderful little spiritual journey and stepped into that yin feminine energy of myself. And coming into 2017, I've never been that busy in my work before, ever. And then I moved into a new relationship who became my husband. I didn't realize I was heading into a narcissistically abusive marriage. So I just went right the way back into survival mode. And my business has been almost like to the point of being non-existent. And I see that conversation recurring with so many practitioners of when we're functioning in that heavy survival mode, we can't practice our medicine there because we don't feel safe to practice our medicine, because there's, as much as we're holding authority and a level of power in the work that we do, we've got to operate from a space of softness. We're an embodiment of that mother energy, so we've got to come from softness. And when we aren't, our clients are going to pick up on that, and that feeling of not being safe to open up and do the work. Like Sarah, you put it really beautifully. So for me, in the clients that I work with practitioners specifically, that's definitely one of the shifts of, I have to step into my yin, I have to step into my softness. And for me, that's pretty much where I'm moving myself back into that soft yin, because I know that I thrive there. I know that I do much better there. And I can assist my clients better in that space as well.
Yeah. I would say one of the things that I definitely agree, Tam, like there has definitely been this shift. And I would say for me, I'm seeing more of holding space and quiet than I've ever had in sessions. So I've been doing sessions for the past 11 years, and before it was this feeling like I had to, and maybe part of it was me, and I think part of it also being the collective energy, was me trying to solve the problem and give them the information and go right in, where now, they're showing up differently too, because, AI, whether you love AI or not, it's helped people, right? People go to AI and they're typing in, here's what's going on, and they're getting languaging. So they're coming to sessions with this knowledge, right? Like you said earlier, like I hear narcissist all the time, and it's like, oh, I was in a narcissist relationship, or my partner is a narcissist, or, I'm hearing these words, or, there's this trauma, and they have the specific wording, codependency, that now they're trying to unpack. So they're showing up with some information, but they're still kind of struggling to connect it as well. And so there's a lot more of me having to hold that space and let them inquire for themselves, let them bring forward what's within them, instead of trying to do it the opposite, right? With us telling them what they should be doing or what they should be, right, feeling or thinking, which I think was the old kind of model. Not to say that there isn't times where we're going to do that, but it's more so of this ability to hold that space for them to have the insight, which is a different way of working with somebody, right?
Mm. I want to say it's almost like putting them back in the womb, if you
Yeah,
will. I mean,
yeah,
what was one of the safest spaces for all of us, the womb. All our
yeah.
needs were being met, and then we were, shoved headfirst into this bright world and smacked on the back, and off you go, you know. Yeah, and to your point, Danny, the we kind of operated from the let me sort your problems for you, let me
Yep.
tell you what the problem is, and instead there's that kind of empowerment that's coming with clients that say,
Mhm.
I see this being the issue, help me unpack it. Okay, let me create a container in which to do that. I think that was a really insightful what you've said there. Hmm.
Yeah. So definitely something I think practitioners, right, we have to unlearn as the feminine is rising, as we're allowing our clients to embody more of that. And as we are embodying more of that, like we have to kind of unlearn some of those old masculine ways of doing things. What else do you guys see that maybe as either practitioners that we are having to unlearn or to relearn in some cases that to support our clients as this energy is coming through?
Hmm.
Similar to what you were saying there about like we've been on a path of we need to be fixed. There's something broken that
Mhm.
needs to be fixed. There's we need to be healed. And I believe that the whole world is on a healing journey,
Mhm.
but that the feminine is shifting us into a journey of wholeness. So ultimately, when we
Yeah.
hold this, I call it the remembering. We're just remembering who we are. And so
Mhm.
language is shifting, our wisdom is shifting, how we operate is shifting. We're unwinding a lot of religious trauma, and that is religious trauma in organized religion, in New Age, in
Yeah.
astrology, in every religion that there was.
Yeah.
We're unwinding a lot of that trauma. And again, it comes back to grace and presence. I offer for the last decade, I've been working in the gene keys and something called
Mm.
astrosophie, which is more of a divine feminine aspect of star wisdom that's connected to Mary Magdalene and Yeshua, and then human design. And in that, I mean, I would witness it wake up people over and over again because you're just reminding them who they are
Mhm.
as a child of God, as
Yeah.
creator's creation and of goodness. And something I've seen shift in the last several years when I'm working with somatics in the body is like just by coming into a room, asking to be the presence of the mother, the presence of God, asking to be filled with love, and then just being that presence in a room with somebody's body,
Huge.
it's
Yeah.
every
Yeah.
and it's like, and I've watched my clients that I've worked with their soul blueprints over years, be transformed a lot. But then when we got into the body, massive shifts,
Yep.
huge emotional releases, huge awakenings, and I didn't have to do anything. It was just
Yeah.
within them. So I think a big part of our shift is transforming the power back to empowering each one of us as our own, with our own connection to God, our own ability to use our breath and our hands and our to transform ourselves. So
Yeah.
there's a shift also in then the guru and giving the priest the power to the priest, the power to the guru, the power to your,
Yes.
your whoever your person that you put in power over you is. And I think that's a big shift in the feminine as well. Do you see that happening?
Mm, that's a conversation that's popped up in quite a few episodes, quite naturally, actually, and in different discussions that I've seen go on. Um, where there's a shift towards empowering the client. So instead of we give you the answers, we give you we're here to heal you, we're here to fix you, and let's give you the tools so that you can do this for yourself. And coming back to what you're saying about talk therapy, it can only go so far because it only hits on one layer of a person. But when we're getting
Right.
into like somatics and movement and breath, and now you're releasing things, now you're actually doing something, and you're doing it for the self. I mean, you can't do somatic work for someone else. You can't, well, I mean, you could always like shake them and be like, hello, but I don't think we should be handling our clients in that manner. I think there's some ethics there. But yeah, the shift towards a more somatic approach. I mean, there's a big rise in somatics, and I can see why, because trauma sits in the body, and you can, and in fact, it's a conversation I've been having with my mentor for the last 2 weeks is, moving trauma and shifting trauma, and you can sit and discuss your trauma for the next 10 years with a therapist, but are you moving the trauma? No, you're just talking about it. And all you're doing is you're kind of reminding the body and you're reminding the mind of that trauma. So you're just spinning your wheels, whereas somatics is like, let's shake that out. Let's loosen that off and let's get it out there. There's a really great practitioner who's been on a couple of times, Tamla Lyons-Price. And she does a workshop called the Good Girl Unlearned by letting her rest. And I think for the world at large, it's always been the action. You've got to do, you've got to be going, you've got to be hustling, you've got to be grinding. And as practitioners, that doesn't work for us. And the work that we do, that doesn't work for us. You've got to have rest and restoration. I think that falls into the somatic realm as well, where your body's just constantly moving and going and doing. You've got to kind of do that other counterpart to the somatic side of things. Yeah, definitely. There's shifts in how we're working and the understanding of why we're working that way with our clients.
I love that you said that. And I think you also hinted at this, Sarah, is the approach from it being, me being the guru mentor, right? Idea to us having a more collaborative and supportive relationship, right? And so I think that is where the feminine thrives, right? If you think about the practices, like first off, we are not like feminine rising is not a new thing. Like the feminine energy and the way that the feminine leads has been for eons, right? And so it's a lot of it in the remembering, as you said, Sarah, of us remembering from our ancestors, from our own past experiences, our own past lives, in how do we do that, right? Because my question here is, one of the challenges I've had is, yes, I don't believe it should all be, this dominant masculine energy, but also part of this, and I think it's relevant here, is how do we not become the feminine rising masked as the masculine, right? Because that right there, that's defeating the whole purpose, right? Yes, this is soft and gentle and lovely, but how do we not allow ourselves as the practitioners to fall into that model of still being in that dominant sense? And I think you kind of touched on it there, Sarah, with kind of the collaboration energy. I'd love to know how you guys are seeing that and what your thoughts are.
Absolutely. And here the understanding the difference between patriarchy and matriarchy I found to be really helpful. Patriarchy is that hierarchical system where everything is kind of small concentration and drip down. So when you look at the movement of gurus in sort of like the 1960s and 70s, particularly here in the US, you had a lot of yoga coming in, you had a lot of Eastern practices coming in, and you had a lot of gurus coming in, and they were all very patriarchy based. I'm the authority. I'm the ultimate master. I'm going to solve all your problems here. And they came with a lot of ego. And where we're shifting towards that more feminine rising and more matriarchal system, and this is where the big difference comes in, is that matriarchal is circular. It's 100%, it's collaborative. It's working with a person. It's meeting them where they are and saying, okay, let me walk you with this journey. I'm not going to do the work for you, but I'm going to hold your hand while we do the work. And have that collaborative relationship with them instead of being the authority. And there's really great examples of that hierarchy and amongst that guru practitioner space, especially in the new age movements. And I think that's one of the big shifts You know, and it's not, you know, people hear the word matriarchy and instantly they get their back up and they're like, oh, that's woman gonna dominate men. It's like, no.
No.
It's not how the
That's the
matriarchy.
masking, right? That's the masking of it. Yeah.
That's it. You know, it's not, you know, women are gonna have this structure now. You know, it's like we're all gonna sit on the same level and we're gonna have some conversations about things. You know, and that's where matriarchy is beneficial for men and women. It's beneficial for the whole. You know, whereas the patriarchal system is who's sitting at the top, who is the ultimate authority. You know, that's my 2 cents on it.
I loved your 2 cents.
I love your 2 cents too.
It's my $200 then.
Yeah, if we just focus on feminine rising and we don't come into balance, we will just have another shift in the wrong direction, out of balance. So when we really contemplate this, it's coming into a right relationship with the divine masculine within ourselves, then that's mirrored outwards. And again, it's like, you know, I'm a daughter of a Baptist preacher and granddaughter of a Baptist preacher and great granddaughter. We go back to like
Wow.
spiritual advisors for kings and queens in England, and this path that came to the United States and anyways became the Baptist Church. My father resigned from that when I was a teenager because he went to like this dark night of the soul and he was being really convicted with things in the church. And now my dad is a spiritual director. He has worked for hospice, is like a death doula, and
Wow.
and so this, I use my dad as an example because he's in a man's body, but he embodies the feminine as like a mystic. And he's been a great teacher and a great guide for me and what it looks like to walk this path. And so for me, then I started to just really want to study these ancient. I'm going to go back as far. I go back to like Isis and Osiris, and then I'm studying Magdalene and Yeshua, and this left-hand path of the Christ, which what I would call it, or the feminine path, is still this. It's grace. It's grace that just falls over us. So I think the big shift that we are being called to in the feminine is so washed in grace, and it's how it shows up in the last couple of years. What's shifted me, because I was like a single mother, right? So I had to be really in my masculine because I had to provide for her. I had to, you know, all these things. So for me to shift in the feminine it's been a road. And in the last few years, what I've experienced is a prayer that I've prayed. And the word God might trigger a lot of people. It did for me for a long time, but so we say God or creator or source, whatever you want to say, but I see it as good and perfect. So when I work with my mom as like my perfect mother, it has shifted my relationship with my body and how I operate in my ministry and everything. And I've learned to receive this overwhelming amount of grace. I think that's kind of our core wound, is that we were just dislocated, disconnected from our mother. And then we were told a story of a father that was broken as well. And so I think I've gone on a tangent here, but I just wanted to speak into like this like restoring this relationship. And even in my business, it's like, well, then Creator God is my perfect provider. So instead of having to go on social media to market or do some funnels or do all these things, when we know who we are, we know that Creator God is our perfect provider and marketing director. And the more we open to receive, the more it just happens for us. So that's a shift I've also seen as a practitioner and as a medicine woman. I don't have to like work hard at any of that. I just need to be who I'm here to be. And the person I'm meant to support will come along. The resources for that will come along. Have you all experienced that in your work?
100%.
Yeah.
I had this exact conversation about 2 hours ago, actually. So, yes. Yes.
I had a very similar, probably a little bit a little earlier than yours, Tam, but I did as well. And still being able to maintain that softness, the grace, the slowness in my business, and still meeting the revenue goals that I have and the higher impact that I want to make without burning myself out, without in the doing, but being in the being, right? Tam, what about you? What was yours around?
Yeah, that's pretty much hitting on that, the being. Yeah, and it was actually two different conversations that had a bit of a crossover, and one is I had an Akashic record reading done, and then obviously my mentor and I are doing quite a bit of unpacking work. We're working with Joe Dispenza's book at the moment. And the conversation I had from my Akashic Records reading was very much, when she said she looks at life, everything that happens in life is a gift. So she's just constantly unwrapping presents, and that's being in that receptive state, and she said to me in my reading, she was like, stop trying to reach out and grab for things, which is a very yang heavy thing to do. It's very action focused. And so when you sit back into receptivity, things will come to you with more flow and with more ease. And if I think back to 2017, I was completely receptive. Tarot is a really great teacher here with the high priestess and the magician being the two counterparts. Your magician is very action. He is very yang. He gets up and he does the things. Whereas the high priestess just sits there and she just lets the things come to her. She just knows. And she's just content in that. So it's like your divine feminine and divine masculine right there. And then took that conversation to my mentor and had the conversation with her there. And it's very much about becoming who you are and stepping into who you are and being receptive to the gift of that experience. And when you're doing this kind of work, we've got to know who we are. So, who's coming into session, who's doing the work with the clients. And it's very difficult to know who you are when you're trying to action who you are instead of just being who you are. So it's that receptivity and God, universe, source, it's just gonna dish out the gifts, and also the perception of your experiences. Was this an awful experience, or was there a gift in this experience? And does that allow you to become more and more of who you are, so you're allowed to just continue to be?
So I want to bring this in here. It was kind of mentioned already, and you kind of touched on it here right now, Tam, is how do we, as practitioners, still keep the authority in the sense of we're here, we have information, right? We have information, we have knowledge that others can benefit from, right? We can help people, right? How do we keep that authority while still walking alongside? Like, this is a challenge, right? Because often the outside, world is going to say, especially as a business owner, right? We have to be the authority. When we look at like social media and how we're putting ourselves out there, and whether we're speaking or doing podcasts or whatever that might be, like, we've got to be the authority, right? We have to have the knowledge and the expertise that can support somebody, so somebody can see that and say, this person gets it, I want to go work with them. How do we keep that, but still being, right, that guide, but still walking alongside them, still being in that feminine energy of being, and still having that authority? How do we balance that? Because that, to me, I'm starting to see that as a challenge in practitioners, and like, well, how do I do that? How do I be the authority but still walk along somebody? So what do you guys see, or maybe what do you do in how you're doing that as this shift is happening?
Collaboration. Definitely going to go back to the collaboration conversation again. And check your ego. When we're doing this kind of work, when you're doing any kind of spiritual work, whether as a practitioner or you're teaching that work to someone else, or you're just a general curious about being on the spiritual path, any kind of spiritual work you do will enhance who you inherently are when you come to that work. So that's why you've got to take on the responsibility of working through the ego aspect so that you're not enhancing the ego, because the work can be very empowering. I mean, there's nothing like a client saying, like, you've changed my life. That was amazing. You've made me feel better. There's a certain level of, power that comes through with that. And if we're focused on the ego aspect of the self, it waters that ego, and so the ego craves more of that. And then you're now stepping into having attachments to your clients to keep giving you that. Yep. That validation. So you're seeking external validation from your clients now, instead of just being in the work that you're doing. So yeah, collaboration and checking ego, I think for me, are the two biggest factors there. There's something to be said for remaining humble in the work that you do.
I agree. And grace.
Yeah.
It's so much grace. It's seeing that person is me. We are we like the whole world won't be healed until we're all healed. It's very true. We're either all good or we're not. We're either created in goodness or we're not. And so it is, like you said, humility is a big part of it. And we'll be attracted to and have clients attracted to us the more grace we can embody. And it is embodiment. It's not just how we talk, but it is how we embody it. So there's a vibration there. There's a frequency there. That's part of it. And then the other thing you were talking about was responsibility. For one thing, it's like the good mother. I'm a mother, and there's nothing my daughter could do that would ever change my love for her, or how I see her, or the way, her worthiness, her value is intact, because she is a daughter of God, just like me. Now, do I want to inspire her to be responsible? Yes. So I think that's part of embodying that as elders and practitioners, is that, first of all, we're responsible for ourselves. And then the embodiment of that, then in grace and love, supporting and walking beside somebody to be responsible for themselves. And that is, especially when what I do, I want to help people be responsible for their darkness and their light. You're responsible for bringing your shadows up. Yeah. There's no judgment. There's no shame. Yeah. You aren't these things, but you're responsible to bring them up and bring love and grace. And I'm going to walk beside you and bring the love and grace into that and help you transform that. And you're responsible for your gifts and your genius and, that. So that's what I would see in this, like, that we're an authority in embodiment and love and grace that elevates one another. Yeah.
Yeah. I think you hit it nail on the head for me, and what I see and how we as practitioners can do that is the actual embodiment of it, the actual being and modeling for people what that looks like. And that's something, I know I'm working on every single day to make sure that I'm doing my own work to be able to hold that space, to embody that, and so that they feel it and they can learn to trust it themselves instead of me, I think I say this every single time, like I have a discovery call of some sort, is the first thing I say is, first off, I just want you to know I'm not here to heal you. Like, that is not what we're doing here. Like, that is not my job. Like, I'm here to guide, right? I'm here to maybe point you in some direction, but I am not here to heal you. That's something that you do on your own. And like, just even asking or stating that question at the very beginning of the session just kind of sets that tone of like, I don't have all the answers, right? Like, actually you have all the answers, and we're going to help shine the light on that. And I think that is what, Tam, you're talking about with the ego is, yes, I love when my clients are like, you've helped me so much and this was great and I felt this beautiful shift. Yes, I love that. And also having the expectation that whatever happens, whether they tell me that, whether they don't tell me that, whether I see a big expression of transformation or I don't, that session was perfect as it was. It was exactly what it needed to be. I hold nothing, right? Nothing, no expectations of what it should be or what it could be. It is what it is. And I think that shift for me of trusting that whatever's going to come out, whatever's going to happen is exactly what that person needs. Like that's an intention I always set. Even for our conversations, here is I set that intention that the exact words that I need to say, that the exact thing that somebody needs to hear is going to be said through me as a channel, and knowing that I am a channel. Like I am a channel, and trusting that and letting my ego, sit in the background, take some notes, and, be able to call me out when I need to be called out at the appropriate time. But letting that go and giving, like you said, I think, Sarah, so beautifully, grace, not only for myself, and I might do something wrong. I might not have all the right answers. I might have maybe done this instead of this. And also giving grace to my client in where they might be struggling and where they might be challenged and how they're working through that process, right? How they're, attempting, right? And failing, which I don't think that is a bad thing at all. I don't think failure is a bad thing. I think failing is beautiful because we found out ways in which that didn't work. We find out new information. As Tam, as you said, like everything is information. It's a gift. It's all a gift. And I think that is beautiful, and teaching people that that's okay, right? I think that's really, 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 I think where I'm seeing at least this shift really take place. And that's exciting. That is really exciting for me.
I see it not as failure, but I call it falling with grace. Failure is like so masculine, like, competitive, and there's not a competitive bone in my body. But then I see the Divine Mother as like falling with grace. Okay.
I love that.
Yeah.
Falling with grace.
There's a really great quote that was shared in one of the Facebook groups that I'm in. She runs the actual group, and she said, you can either, there's fake it till you make it, but she prefers to say embody it to become it, embody it to be it.
Yeah.
Both of you are talking about that embodiment factor. So it's like be the embodiment of grace. Like Sarah, I love that word. Be the embodiment of the knowledge that you hold. That's, I think we overcomplicated, where it's like, how do I embody it? just be it.
Just be it. Yeah.
And be it with grace. Yes.
Yeah. You might not get it right the first time. I think that's the human experience though, right? That's why we're here. I mean, part of maybe why we're here is to learn and to fall with grace. And how do we move through that? How do we function through that? I would love to know, do you feel like this is like, it's clear, it's happened, like the feminine energy is here, it is not going anywhere? Yes. Or do you feel like it's just beginning? Like we're at the very beginnings of it. Where do you guys kind of see that happening? Is it fully emerged, or are we still kind of moving through it?
I would go ahead. I think we are in what started at like 100-year period. And when you study the stars, especially this astrosurvey that I've been working with, it looks at the exact placements of the stars and planets, different than tropical or Western, and we use the life and miracles, the death and birth of Yeshua, to translate star wisdom. And what we see in the last 100 years in the stars is the descent of the feminine, that it's been ordained, it's prophecy, it's destined for this time. Mary Magdalene's gospel wasn't found until this time for a reason. There was a purpose behind that. How is that book lost for thousands of years, and 3 copies happen to be found like within this short amount of period? So yes, I believe that it's happening, it's being birthed, and it's the launch point for where we're headed. Does that feel the same to you?
Yeah. I mean, the conversations around the shift in consciousness I've been having since I was 14 or 15 with my older brother is where the conversations kind of started. That was like where critical mass originated from, was those conversations, guiding that shift in consciousness. And there's always been something that sat inside me that said we will hit a tipping point.
Yeah.
And I think this is what we're at right now, is the tipping point. I feel like coming into 2025 was like that. There's something in that year. I don't know what was in the stars or what the alignment was, but that kind of shoved us into that tip point. And, I've had this conversation with so many different people in so many different places around the world throughout the years. And we've always spoken about the tipping point. And for a lot of us, they've said, I don't think the tipping point will be in my lifetime. And something inside of me said, I think so. I think it will be. I think we'll see it. So I think it's been brewing, like Sarah said, for the last 100 years. And now we're at the tip point. Now we're at the point where like the momentum is there. And everywhere I look, it's just feminine rising all over the place. And there's almost like this last ditch attempt by the patriarchy to kind of like cling to its power. And we're just like, no, we're not doing that anymore.
Yeah. Which I think also, I agree with both of you. I think it's been coming for a long time. I do believe we're in that tipping point right now. And I also feel like, because it is, even though it's not new, it still is very new in many ways, right? And so the understanding of it is still kind of coming out. And so that's going to take, again, patriarchy is going to fight for its position and its leadership and its role in that way. And it's almost as if like, people are scared, right? Like, what if we do go all, this way? Like, things go extreme, right? Like, what if it goes all the way this way? What does that look like? And that fear. And so it's like, it's almost as if there's this education and understanding that has to happen. And also it's through, as I think we've been saying through this entire conversation, is the embodiment of it. Like, we all have to embody it so that it can be seen, because we can yap all day about what it should look like, what it's going to look like, what it's going to be. But until we actually see what it can do and how it does look like. And I also want to say here, I don't think any of us are really saying the patriarchy needs to go 100%. There's a balance that has to happen. And I think with the feminine rising, and we can bring this into the conversation here, with the feminine rising, we're just trying to kind of equal some things out or bring some sort of balance back in. Would you guys agree with that?
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. An egalitarian is the core premise of the feminine rising. That's what matriarchy is. The feminist movement, it's egalitarian, it's equal. We're not, and I think that's where a lot of the fear comes in, where it's like feminine rising and half the male population shrinks and they're like, no, because they're scared that women are going to rise and do to them what men have done for the last few centuries. And that's not the case at all. It's bringing everybody into that equal footing. The system of patriarchy hasn't served anyone except for a small collective, so it's impacted both men and women. It's not, yes, we have been suppressed. And I think that's why this feminine rising feels so loud, is because, a couple of years ago, we weren't allowed to have a say or a vote or a bank account or, all of these things. And we had the suffragette movements across different countries. And now all of a sudden, we have platforms to do that. We have social media, we have our YouTube channel. I'm sure people are going to see the feminine rising conversation coming out and they're going to be like, no. And we're like, but it's okay. We come in love and light. We promise. We come in peace. So I think there is the misguided perception that, the feminine rising is going to be the same as patriarchy, just woman on top, but it's not. It's very egalitarian. It's very, very equal. It's very balanced, and it's not dismissing the masculine at all. It's about restoring the balance, because we've been heavy in the masculine for so long. We've all been in survival mode for so long. So we've got to rise the feminine in all of us. It's not just women rising. It's that aspect rising in each and every one of us on that global level. Mm.
Yeah, we need it to restore the family.
Mm. Mm.
What's necessary, because the family is there's been a war against the family and community, the family,
Yes.
as in
Yeah.
we are all one family, and
Yeah.
then bloodline families. So we have to come into a balance if we're going to move forward and restore a relationship with the family, and also then with the mother as our earth. They're both it's twofold, and it's the same, both of those things. And so we're seeing this shift as systems crumble, and there's a lot of fear in that. But when we can see with God's eyes, we see right now it all has to happen. And we're at the same time as it's all crumbling, we're building to come into that balance again with the feminine and the masculine. Yeah.
I love the thing of mentioning the family, because it's the global community. If we go into the collective conscious, where you look at the word alone, all one. You're never alone. You're always connected to someone. I've seen the collective at work numerous times over the years, and restoring that balance allows one to feel less isolated and alone. Where it's like, hey, I do belong to something. It takes a village. It takes a village to raise a child, and you look at moms in this day and age, and they're just exhausted, burnt out, depleted, because they're doing the work that's of an entire village.
Yeah. I recently saw somebody on social media. I can't remember who it was, but she was her like reel, right, on Instagram was all about, how she is supporting her community in the sense of her friends. And I thought it was such a beautiful thing to see. And I've seen a lot more of it in witnessing this community, this collective coming together to support each other. Some of the things that she did was, she had made some food for her family, and she texts one of her friends who's a single mom and was like, hey, I have some extra food that I made. I'm going to drop it by and leave it on your doorstep. And I was like, I loved that in so many ways, because it was, hey, I have excess, like I'm going to give to you, which is what we do, right? What we do as women is we share, we support. And the other aspect of that, it wasn't like, you need to get your house ready because I'm coming over, because some of us are like, oh my goodness, hold on, right? Let me make sure it's presentable. So there wasn't that, she knew, I'm not going to put that pressure on you to have a clean house. I'm just dropping it at your door. We don't need to meet. We don't need to talk. We don't need to schedule a time to come. And I loved, like, she had a couple other examples, and I loved all of that, because I was like, wow, like that's the feminine energy. That's us being feminine leaders in supporting, noticing our fellow, community member and saying, hey, I can help in this way. Let me help. And that, like you both said, that's that, it takes a village. And I think, I'll single out single moms right now, because that is probably one of their big, I tend to work with a lot of single moms, and that is one of their biggest challenges, is trying to manage all the things all by themselves. And for us to return to those practices of, hey neighbor, you just moved in, you probably don't have your shelves stocked, so here's a dump and bake a meal that I froze for you, and you can cook anytime you want. Like returning to those old practices, I think, is part of this, right? As part of us being okay in doing that and feeling good about supporting other people in a way that we can, right? If we're not a cook, we're not a cook. But you get what I mean, like these practices. So where are you guys seeing these, like, maybe ancient practices? And I don't mean ancient as far as it could be any ancient, it could be 50 years ago or longer, right? Where these kind of ancient practices and ancient, rituals maybe even that we did, and now this kind of modern space, like how do we do that? Are we losing some of that? Are we recovering some of that? What are y'all seeing in that?
I see we're re-indigenizing ourselves. I had the pleasure of living on the Lakota reservation a decade ago and spending a lot of time there and having some of my favorite humans on the planet there, being really drawn to indigenous culture from a young age. And I have come to believe that we are all re-indigenizing ourselves to this earth, no matter where we are. And so we're relearning these cultural ways and cultural practices like rituals and initiation. So a few things that I'm seeing in my practice is we are missing rites and initiations at stages in our lives. So what happens is then we have crisis. We have, spirit has to bring some sort of crisis to wake us up, where we would have had a ritual at that certain stage, before our Saturn return, before our first nodal return, these kind of things. And so we're missing those things. So I see that coming into play. When I walk with somebody before their Saturn return and I show them what the story is going to be about and their genius in it, it's maybe an easier journey, I know mine was really rough. And other practices are like what I see with women right when we've first given birth. I had really terrible postpartum depression because I was isolated, because I wanted to have my own sovereign birth, and that was part of that was taken from me. And because I didn't have community right after birth to take care of me in the ways that we're meant to be taken care of. So that's part of my medicine with women that come into my life when they have a baby. I make sure that they are honored, at least for those 40 days, to be able to be nurtured with meals and bone broth that's homemade. And then we're going to see mothers be nurtured and babies be nurtured and families be nurtured from the beginning. So those are a couple of things that I see. And even my grandfather's a preacher. One of the things he wanted to instill in the church was that every church should have a garden. He had this big garden. And he was like, the church should be feeding the community. So we should be growing enough food that we feed the people. And that was one of my favorite things growing up is Papa I would harvest the beans and the corn, and Mama would make a casserole, and then we would go out and deliver this food. It's practices like that I know that we are coming home, because the good mother wants to build a longer table and just really sit around a table and enjoy a meal together, right?
Yeah.
Mothers, we like to feed people, don't we?
Yes. Yeah, it's very much in the nature, and I think it's just the feminine aspect in all of us to want to nurture and grow and give provision and life. And that's a part of what we all carry in us. It's and I love where you're talking about the initiation stages, and I've noted that in parts of my life where I've been initiated into next stages, and I'm just like in the midst of it, I'm like, what is happening right now? Like, wait, what is all of this? And I come out on the other side, and I'm like, oh, initiation. Okay, it makes sense now. But it's because we've so disconnected from those kind of like origins and those rituals and ways of being that we're not aware of those initiation stages. I mean, moving in from into perimenopause and then into menopause, that's a rite of passage for a woman.
Yes, it is.
But we look at it and we're like, oh God, it's menopause. Like my ears are itching, and like I feel hot and flustered, and like my life is miserable. But it's a rite of passage for us. But because it's been kind of broadcast to us in a very specific light, that we don't see it as the initiation. We don't see it as, I'm moving into a space of becoming an elder. I'm becoming a crone for the community around me. It's a privilege to go through menopause. I'm sure every woman watching this is like, you are insane. You are a crazy lady, but like
It
back
is.
thousands of years ago, those things were honored when you started menstruating. Like in certain cultures, that was painted on the walls.
Yeah.
When you gave birth, that was painted on the walls. And we've lost that because um, it's old, it's outdated, it's dirty, it's uncivilized. But yet it's some of the most civilized cultures that had these practices. And then we look at the rise of the Western Empire, and it's probably one of the most uncivilized cultures that we've come across. So, and that's where a lot of the suppression of the feminine has come in. And I love the term, re-indigenizing ourselves, because if you look at indigenous cultures, matriarchy, matrilineal, matrifocal, that's because they know, and it's not because women are better than men. It's because of like how we fit together as a community and the different places and spaces for everyone. The women are honored in a certain way, and men are honored in a certain way. And I think we've just lost so much of that. But the indigenous cultures, they're still doing it. They still got the practices, and that's where if we can learn from those cultures, I think we can learn a lot. Hmm.
Absolutely.
I've seen a big shift in like this idea. So, of as we've been talking, and I'm going to use the word homesteading, right? So, returning to those practices that maybe our mothers or grandmothers did, so not too far off, right, from where that is. But I do feel like there was a point where it kind of got a little derailed, but we're kind of coming back to that, right? And so I'm for me personally in my sessions and in my work, I'm starting to see that come through with the challenge though, because there are women who are want to stay home and make the bread, right? Want to do the homemade bread and want to have the home cooked meals and want to be able to stay with their home with their children for the first 5 years before sending them off into public education, right? They're wanting to do these things. They're wanting to raise chickens, right? There was a huge movement a few years ago of women wanting to raise chickens. And there's this homestead lifestyle that many of us crave, which is part of the feminine energy, right? There's part of the feminine in that. And how do we still do that, right? When we're expected to go to work. Not that it's a good or bad thing, but like, right? Like where does that, like, it's a lot of the healing that has to happen in the belief systems, the conditioning that we've had to say that that's only for stay-at-home moms. How does the mom that is a full-time entrepreneur or is a full-time corporate executive still do that? Like, how are we as practitioners supporting those women through these beautiful changes of, returning to these practices and also still living in this modern era that we're in? How are you guys seeing that and how are you approaching it yourselves?
My family has a homestead.
Oh, there we go. I love it.
Um, my family has a homestead. My daughter and I have been nomadic since 2008. So this has been, we've been on a spirit-led journey and we travel the world and travel where spirit moves us in times. And a lot of times it is at homesteads. But my family has a homestead that we go and we stay at. We just got back from 3 weeks there planting the spring garden together. So I would say it's community and it's family. And it's reshaping things. So it's reshaped how my brother works. So some days my brother is at home, like my sister-in-law is a nurse practitioner. She has 4 children and about to birth her fifth.
Wow.
And she works a day or two or a day and a half a week as a nurse practitioner. And those are the days that my brother does the homeschooling and does the meals. And they share responsibility and meals together. Our family shares things together. Honestly, when you start to do it, you see how it actually eases things up in your life. It eases so much. Um, and having your own eggs and making your own bread. And you see this movement. My daughter has been making her own bread for a long time. She loves it. It's like her thing. And you see all these young 20s doing this.
Love it.
And I would also speak to, so I think it's community. We have to do it together. Even if it's a few people on your street, you have a little party one night, you say, hey, who wants to do this or that? We've got a yard. Let's do this together. Let's learn it together. And we're in a 7-year period of some challenges that you might call crisis points. And the financial one that's happening right now is a great opportunity that is going to, so a lot of people are like Pinterest farmers, I call them. You know, like they've got it on their vision board, but they're just like, I couldn't actually do that. Well, you actually can. And as the financial system has its reevaluation, its reshift, we're going to be able to, just like we had a health shift to see our bodies and our health and the Western medicine and all that in new light. This is going to give us a new relationship with currency or money. And I think we're going to see a lot of people saying, all right, let's get a neighbor or two together and see what we can do together, you know? And then all of a sudden you as a mom are like, wait, maybe I only have to work 3 days a week, you know, and I still love my work, but I don't have to do it all the time. Does that feel like a way we can shift?
Yes. Yes.
And
community. Yes, it's we're not supposed to do life alone. We're not islands floating in a vast ocean of nothingness. We've got to do things together. And I think that we also don't realize how little we actually need. So we have this mindset of, my fridge always has to be full, but how much stuff do you end up throwing away? I've always got to have stock of everything. But do you really? So we carry too much and we inundate ourselves with too much, and then we'll end up throwing away half of that. Whereas if we were more community oriented, if my fridge was full, I could feed my neighbors for the next couple of nights. And if their fridge is full, they could feed me for the next couple of nights. I saw that when Hurricane Helene came through and wiped our power out for a week, and we've all got things defrosting in our freezer now, and we're like, okay, we know how to make a fire. So we're gonna cook all of this stuff. You bring your eggs and bring your bacon, bring all your things. Let's cook and let's feed everybody. So it's community effort, and when you're have your own eggs, you don't have to go to the store to buy that. So you can actually work one less day because you don't have to buy as much stuff as you need. And I think people hear the word homesteading and they're like, that's a full-time job. And I don't believe it is. I think that there's ways to, and Sarah's put it really well, there's ways to work that you can fit it in. You come home from work and you go out and you water your veggie garden.
Yep.
Not harvesting your beans every 2 days. You're harvesting your beans once or twice a year.
Yep.
So it's working with the natural rhythms and cycles, and also with the whole thing of moving into that feminine energies. We're moving away from that hustle and grind culture that says you got to start your day at 3 in the morning and you got to finish your day at 10 at night. Of course, no, then you're not going to have time to go and pick your beans and water your garden.
Yeah.
But if we're moving more into softness and balance, you are going to have time for that. And you're going to have time to do that with the people around you, whether that's family or neighbors or, a community garden.
It's where you'll spend your energy instead of watching a bunch of Netflix, a Netflix show at night, or weeding the garden or planting seeds, your meditation in the morning and your exercise. It's really doable and really transformative when you get your hands in the soil and you eat your own food, and then you control what goes into that.
Yeah, right. I mean, I've seen, and maybe it's just my algorithm, but I've seen a huge shift in people really against a lot of the processed type foods that we're seeing, right? And so going into making their own, like I don't know how many things I have saved in Instagram of all the things that I'm going to make because, there's no preservatives in any of the things. And I love all that. And at the same time, I have to work on my own belief system around that, right? And that's where I'm seeing the struggle as far as for myself, but also with clients in that way. So as a practitioner, knowing this is what's coming and this is what's heading and this is what we're returning to, and yet helping clients embody that themselves, where it doesn't feel wrong or it doesn't feel like they're not doing enough, or the ones that at this time can't do it because of whatever reason or whatever belief they might have, and helping them really work through that of not feeling like I'm not a woman now because I can't do these things that all these other women are doing, right? Or the 20-year-olds who are like, I just want to work on my farm all day and not work, and us as a society looking at that and like, they're lazy, right? Like those belief systems, those paradigms that we have around what this should look like and what that should look like, I would 100% agree, Sarah, like that is shifting and changing, but those constructs are still there. Like they're still there, and we as practitioners are guiding our clients. How would you recommend, or how would you advise maybe, or even what you're doing yourself in that realm of helping other practitioners who might be confronting that themselves, right? Who might be challenging their own belief systems, or helping others challenge their own belief systems around this idea of returning to these practices of, I agree, like waking up with the sun is so beautiful, and just watching the sun set is like something, it does something with your rhythm that is like no other. And yeah, getting away from Netflix binging and doing something different. But how do we, like, that's great in theory, like I love it and I'm for it. How do we work through that though?
I think it starts with first the understanding that we've been primed for a capitalist-based society. There's a wonderful documentary called A Century of Self. So coming out of World War II, Eddie Bernays is Sigmund Freud's nephew, and he was pretty much brought on to, what do we do with the people now? How do we boost the economy? How do we get things going again? Your people, they're not going to war, so what are we going to do with them? And he had studied wartime propaganda, and he asked the question, can we use wartime propaganda in peace times for different things?
Yeah.
There's the birth of marketing and PR. That is where marketing comes from. Wartime propaganda being switched around to, let's use propaganda as a way to sell things. And there's one of the experiments that he did was, tobacco companies came to him and said, men are our only customers. How do we tap into the female market? And Eddie Bernays said, well, let's have a look and see what propaganda we can put out there. And there was an Easter parade happening, I think, in New York City, and he invited, I think, 12 women, stuck a cigarette in each one of their hands, phoned a couple of news agencies and said, there's going to be a protest of women, protesting their torches of freedom. So give it a good slogan, good old Uncle Sam, your country needs you kind of slogan, but torches of freedom. Now you have this huge surge in the market that says, women are now buying cigarettes because they want their torches of freedom. They want to light that up for themselves. So understanding the psychology that went on in getting us to where we are now, being very capitalist and pushing the cheap, fast, and easy. It's so much easier to just stop in the McDonald's drive-thru on your way home because you just worked a 12-hour shift, and I don't want to go home and cook. I don't want to go home and pick my beans and watch the sunset. I want to go home and watch my Netflix and chill and eat my McDonald's. So there's a programming that's happened with us over a good run of time that's got us to where we are. So I think it starts with that awareness first. How did we get here? Wartime propaganda that's been shifted into the marketing space that says, you watch a McDonald's ad, 2 days later, you're like, man, I want me some McDonald's. You see someone drinking a Coca-Cola in a movie and you're like, I want a Coca-Cola. the subliminal aspect that comes in with marketing. And a lot of people, the vast majority, don't know that. They don't know how we got to the realm of marketing. So for us as business owners to understand that side of marketing is really helpful, and to educate our clients on that, where clients trying to eat healthy or do healthy. Okay, you know why you're craving that McDonald's burger? Because marketing is telling you to do the thing. So it's also giving a form of empowerment to people as well. I mean, it's a series I recommend to everybody. Like, watch this documentary because it makes everything make a lot more sense. So I think understanding how we got here is really helpful. So instead of and we all feel the pull to going back to the land. We all want to sit outside and watch the sunset. We want to put our hands in the soil, but capitalist society has said, but for what? Why do you want to get your hands dirty? Let these fancy farmers out here with their big machines get their machines dirty for you. So that cheap, fast, and easy aspect and instant gratification we all want it, and we want it right now. We don't want to wait 6 months for our carrots to grow. We want to go to our freezer and pull the carrots out and have them then. So it's mental shift. It's educating the self and mental shifting around how we view the world around us. We don't need cheap and easy. We don't have to operate from instant gratification, because the reward of picking your own carrots and your own beans and collecting your own eggs will far outweigh the 2 seconds of eating the McDonald's burger.
Absolutely.
I love all that, and it's like we just have to do it. We just have to do it. I've been talking about Monsanto and these kind of things. I'll turn 50 in June, since I was a teenager growing up in West Virginia, and I had a lot of bitterness for decades because nobody was changing, even though they knew it. Like, I was telling people, these are wartime chemicals that you're using. They're killing us. They're killing my people. And I will admit that in my 40s, there started to be some fatigue in telling the story, doing the things, and not seeing the shift. And so, again, back to what we were talking about in the very beginning, the Divine Mother it's like a spiritual awakening. This is just, you have to understand that we were waiting for divine timing, and it is now. And then there's been certain things that have happened that have inspiring people to it. Health crisis, because they're finally seeing it. People had some, because we've lost rituals, people tend to now have to get sick to wake up, which breaks my heart. Yeah. And it could be, and I've seen this financial, what's about to happen for a while, and I'm at peace with that, because I know something has to happen for us to come together. And I was at Helene for 6 months. My daughter and I supported there, and yeah, what we saw on the ground was everybody sharing everything they had. People that were from all different walks of life and might have never sat at the same table. I would just leave it at that. And maybe been, would have never sat at the table. Just leave it at that. Helping, sharing, collecting, collaborating. And so yeah, part of it is seeing there's been a system in place, and it's still in place in the media to corrupt us and to program us. And once we then wake up to the programming, well, now we just got to do it. And we have to be the ones that do it. They show others, oh, wow, this can actually happen. You could actually do that. And we see that happening because you see it. Your feed's flooded with it. And so it's exciting.
It's very exciting.
Yeah.
It's like lead by example.
Yes.
Actions speak louder than words.
I love it.
And I think, as I was inspired by this one reel, I think I shared that immediately, right? Because that is, I think, a message that I think sometimes I think I want to do this, or how do I be part of this, or how do I create this for myself? I've never been exposed to it. I don't know, right? And so seeing these things and sharing with each other, again, the feminine energy, is how we do that, is we share and we share. So as we start to bring this conversation to a close, what other maybe advice, recommendation that you would give another practitioner in this feminine rising, in so how they can support themselves or how they can support their clients, or just anything around that you are like, you know what, I really think this is important for another practitioner to hear, whether it's something you're working on or something you are practicing yourself right now.
What you got, Sarah?
I'm gonna bring it back to grace.
How did I know?
Yes.
That's so interesting. We had an eclipse that came across America a few years ago, 2023, April 8th. And according to Astrophy, there were, I believe, 5 different planets in the gene key of grace. So we really are in a planetary shift into grace. And that's where we transform our suffering through grace, through the divine feminine. It's her medicine for us. And so for me, these last few years, as I've contemplated that and known I'm only responsible for this, and I'm very much responsible for it, it has been a deepening of my relationship with God as grace, that I never had to work for anything. I don't have to try hard. I just have to practice learning how to receive. And I need to be more in my body. And I need to re-indigenize myself to the earth. I need to re-indigenize myself with my relationship with my body and how I speak to my body, how I speak about my body, how I love my body as this temple. The grail is the body, and then that is inspiring my daughter, and it's changing the bloodlines, right? So for practitioners, especially, I'm going to say female practitioners, but we know our male practitioners are going through this as well.
Yeah.
It's really a practice of embodying grace so that we are the embodied examples and that we get out of our own way. We get out of the egoic way and we go into that room every time we're in a room with somebody, that it is not about me, that it is about the person in front of me, and that we through grace, become these, I call it like, let me be your hands and feet, let me be your eyes, let me be your heart of the good of grace. Yeah, so we can remember who we are as love and just come back to practicing love and grace.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
It's beautiful.
Your $200, Sarah.
Yeah, okay.
We've got to upsell ourselves, yeah.
There you go.
I think from my side, you know, that for me, that learned lesson of what my work looks like when Sarah puts it so beautifully, be open to receiving, be open to allowing that flow space to come in. You don't have to chase your clients down. You don't have to chase the work down. You don't have to hustle and grind and be in that space, because you won't thrive there. Feminine energy is about that thriving. Unless you're building something actively, then cool, be yang. But if you're embodying and being in the type of work we do, we need to embody and be. And yeah, that's softening into who you are is really important, and feeling safe enough to do that is also really important. I think for a lot of practitioners, it's like, oh, but I've got to pay my bills, I've got to keep the roof over my head, I've got to keep my kids clothed and fed. So they're operating in that space of not feeling safe enough to relax and trust the universe. I'm a firm believer with the work that we do, we work for the universe. It's a really weird boss to have, but it's one that will always make sure that you're looked after. Sarah, you put it right in the beginning, that you have this ultimate provider that's going to bring the things to you. But if you're constantly grasping, it was said really beautifully to me by the practitioner who did my Akashic reading. She said, if you're constantly reaching, you're going to reach right past it and you're going to miss it altogether. So what she said to me, I'm going to say to everyone else because it's beautiful advice. That's be open, receive, be receptive. That's the best way to do this kind of work as a practitioner, and do it with grace. Yes.
Yeah.
I would agree. So one of the things that I was challenged with by my mentor is to whatever current goal that I have is to look at all the ways that I can attain that goal without any financial support and looking how that is achievable. And that to me was so much embodying this feminine idea of allowing all the different possibilities, and not from a doing standpoint, but an allowing, a receiving, a trusting that it's going to work out, that the opportunity, the possibilities, the connections, the collaborations, all of it will happen. And I think that is something that I'm right now, as as we are stepping into this and this is all coming through. Not that we're allowing it, it's just coming through. But in my allowing of like, how does this work? And I'm kind of to let go of that doing idea all the time, because they're still doing, right? I still have to move into action, but allowing that idea and that concept to come through me is something I'm definitely learning to step into. I'd love, as we come to our end here, what is one thing that you are letting go of as this feminine energy is rising, either within yourself or within your practice?
Control on my end. I can see my control freak inside being like, no. Yeah, I'm letting go of the control.
I hear that one loud.
You can't be in receptive mode if you're like constantly controlling. Yes.
Nope. No, it reminds me of the universal law of allowing.
Yes.
Yeah. Similar. It's just letting go of my will, like trusting that the divine will in my life more than my own innate like will. So letting go of control of the how and the when. And I can tell you, sister, that what you're about, Danny, that your experience, the more you empty and just allow, life unfolds as pure magic. Like I could tell you so many stories about letting go of all my material possessions and not knowing where a meal would come from or where the next money would come from and the exact amount coming or the exact opportunity, and just because the more we're emptied, the more God can fill us up, and it gets pretty magical. Pretty magical.
Yeah,
That's it. That's
I love that
yes.
you said that. I just recently went on just like a quick note here, went on, my love and I are starting a little bit more of a nomadic life. And we went on like a 3-week trip and road trip. And just in the US, more of the like Western United States. And I definitely felt like a lot of that starting to come through, which is why it was like so prime for me in all of it, of like, wow, like, and then preparing for these conversations on the feminine rising is like, wow, like that, it's all beautiful, right? And it's just like, even the simple thing of, I was talking to a friend of mine and she's like, oh yeah, capsule wardrobe, oh my goodness, that's so hard. And I was like, I actually embodied that on this trip because I couldn't take like my whole closet with me, right? And I found how much more freeing it was to have less options, right? Than it was to have my whole closet. And that I literally, when I got back, I looked at our house and I was like, why do we have so much stuff? Like, it was just so clear to me how much nonsense and noise stuff is, and how beautiful my life was when I had none of it. And so I feel you on that, Sarah.
When I was
I'm
in
walking.
my thriving space in 2017, I was homeless and living out of a suitcase. I'd been homeless for a year and a half, but I always had a roof over my head. I always had food to eat. I always had money and an abundance, but I wasn't living in the norm. I mean, my life was 1.5 suitcases. It was mostly books and crystals and cards.
The most important things.
Travel light is the fool, and the fool comes with a pack of tarot cards, man.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, ladies. So, as we close today's conversation, thank you so much, Tam, Dylan, and Sarah Poe, for sharing your experiences, your perspective with us today. You know, I love conversations like this, and it just reminds us that the feminine rising is not this just concept that we're seeing online or in spiritual spaces. This is something that many practitioners are seeing, actively seeing, witnessing in the way that people are relating to healing, the way that people are coming in and shifting into leadership and in authority positions, and even our own personal growth. This shift is asking us as practitioners to become more conscious, more relational, and intentional about how we work, while also still remaining grounded and ethically responsible in the spaces that we are holding. Thank you to everyone who has joined us for this Healer Roundtable discussion, and we look forward to seeing you in our next episode.